First at 5 this Thursday, a Sugar Land man listed as one of the most wanted fugitives by the Department of Health and Human Services, convicted of stealing millions of dollars from taxpayers.
1. Marie Neba, a registered nurse, a director of nursing, a mother of 3 children, and now a woman serving 75 years in federal prison, the second longest healthcare fraud sentence in American history. She was 53 years old when the judge handed down that sentence. She's 62 now. And here's what makes this unbearable. Marie has stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. The cancer has spread to her lungs, her bones, and her spine. She is dying. The judge knew this when she sentenced Marie to 75 years. Marie Neba will never see freedom again. She will die in a federal prison cell. But wait, before we get to the courtroom drama that shocked even seasoned prosecutors, let me tell you who Marie Neba was before she became inmate number whatever they assigned her. She came to America from Cameroon, chasing the same dream millions of immigrants chase. A better life, opportunity, success. She became a registered nurse. She worked her way up. Eventually, she became director of nursing, a position of authority and trust. Then she and her husband, Ebong Tilong, decided to open their own business, Fiango Home Healthcare Incorporated. It sounded legitimate. It looked legitimate. For 9 years, from February 2006 through June 2015, they ran this company in Sugar Land, Texas, a comfortable suburb just outside Houston. They had 3 children together, an 18-year-old son and 10-year-old twin boys. From the outside, they looked like the American success story. Now here's where the facade shatters. Because while Marie was presenting herself as a caring healthcare provider, she was actually running one of the most elaborate Medicare fraud schemes Texas had ever seen. The victims? Elderly Medicare beneficiaries, vulnerable people who trusted the healthcare system, people who believed that when a nurse told them they qualified for free home health services, it was legitimate medical care. It wasn't. These elderly victims had their Medicare information exploited. Many were told they qualified for services they didn't actually need. Many never received the services they were billed for. Hundreds of people, grandmothers, grandfathers, people who'd worked their entire lives and paid into Medicare, became pawns in Marie's scheme. The total damage? Over $13 million stolen from Medicare. $13 million that should have gone to people who genuinely needed medical care. Let me break down exactly how this operation worked, because the level of planning here is staggering. Step 1. Marie and her husband paid illegal kickbacks to patient recruiters. These recruiters would go out and find elderly Medicare beneficiaries, convince them to sign up for home health services. Step 2. Once they had patients signed up, Marie paid more kickbacks, this time to doctors. The doctors would certify false plans of care, medical documents claiming these patients needed home health services when they didn't. Step 3. Marie even paid kickbacks directly to some Medicare beneficiaries themselves, essentially bribing them to let Fiango use their Medicare information. Step 4. With all these fake authorizations in place, Marie billed Medicare for home health services that were not medically necessary. Step 5. She billed for services that were never provided at all. Nurses who supposedly spent hours caring for patients? Never happened. Step 6. Marie falsified medical records to make it look like patients had received care, to make it look like they qualified for these services in the first place. The money trail tells you everything you need to know about greed. Fiengo submitted over $10 million in false claims to Medicare. They received $13 million total. For 9 years, this machine ran smoothly, pumping fraudulent claims through the system, collecting government money, enriching Marie and her husband, while elderly people's Medicare information was being exploited. Medicare auditors eventually noticed the billing patterns. Whistleblowers came forward. The investigation began. And when federal agents started digging, they found video evidence of the fraud. They found falsified records. They found co-conspirators willing to testify. Anyway, here's where Marie's story takes an even darker turn. Because stealing $13 million wasn't enough. When the federal case was building against her, when co-defendants were being questioned, Marie attempted to suborn perjury from a co-defendant, where, in the federal courthouse itself, she tried to get someone to lie under oath in the building where justice was supposed to be served. That's how desperate she'd become. That's how far she was willing to go. The trial happened in November 2016. It lasted 2 weeks. Marie's husband, Ebong, participated in that trial too, for about a week. Then, after seeing the evidence pile up against him, after watching prosecutor after prosecutor lay out the scheme in excruciating detail, Ebong pleaded guilty. He admitted to 1 count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, 3 counts of healthcare fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to pay and receive healthcare kickbacks, 3 counts of payment and receipt of healthcare kickbacks, and 1 count of conspiracy to launder monetary instruments. Marie, she fought. She went all the way through that trial. And on the final day, the jury came back with their verdict: guilty. Guilty on 1 count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. Guilty on 3 counts of healthcare fraud. Guilty on 1 count of conspiracy to pay and receive healthcare kickbacks. Guilty on 1 count of payment and receipt of healthcare kickbacks. Guilty on 1 count of conspiracy to launder monetary instruments. Guilty on 1 count of making false statements. Every single count. Guilty. But wait until you hear what happened on sentencing day, because this is where Marie's story becomes almost unbearably tragic. August 11th, 2017. Marie stood before U.S. District Judge Melinda Harmon in the Southern District of Texas. The judge had reviewed all the evidence. She knew about the $13 million stolen. She knew about the hundreds of elderly victims. She knew about the 9 years of systematic fraud. And she knew something else too. She knew Marie had terminal stage 4 breast cancer. Cancer that had metastasized throughout her body. Marie was dying. The judge knew this, and the judge sentenced her to 75 years in federal prison anyway. How did the judge calculate this sentence? She gave Marie the maximum sentence on each count. Then she ordered those sentences to run consecutively, meaning one after another, not at the same time. 75 years. For a dying woman, the second longest healthcare fraud sentence in federal history. Now here comes the twist that makes this story even more devastating. Remember Marie's husband, Ebong Tilong? The man who pleaded guilty, who admitted to all those crimes? His sentencing was scheduled for October 13th, 2017. The judge ultimately sentenced him to 80 years in prison, even longer than Marie's sentence. But Ebong never showed up to that sentencing hearing. At 7:30 a.m. on the morning he was supposed to appear in court, Ebong cut off his ankle monitor. He disappeared. Just vanished. U.S. Marshals tried to contact him, nothing. They went to his house. He was gone. Ebong Tilong fled the country. To this day, he's never served a single day of that 80-year sentence. He's a fugitive, hiding somewhere, free. And Marie? Marie is behind bars, dying of cancer, serving 75 years, while her husband, her equal partner in this crime, walks free somewhere in the world. He abandoned her. He abandoned their 3 children. He cut off that ankle monitor and ran, leaving his dying wife to face decades in prison alone. Think about what that means for a moment. 3 children lost both parents in a single scheme. Their mother is dying in federal prison. Their father is a fugitive, hiding in some country that won't extradite him back to the United States. The oldest child was 18 when this sentencing happened. Barely an adult, suddenly responsible for 10-year-old twin brothers. The American dream that Marie and Ebong were supposedly chasing, it ended in the complete destruction of their family. Marie Neba will never see freedom again. She'll never watch her twin boys graduate from high school. She'll never meet grandchildren. She'll die in a federal prison cell, her body ravaged by cancer, her reputation destroyed, her family torn apart. And somewhere out there, Ebong Tilong is free. That's the first case, and somehow the dollar amounts only get bigger from here. Drop a comment right now. What time is it where you are? And where are you watching from? 2. Dr. Sharon Iglehart. She stole $158 million. Let me say that number again, because it's almost impossible to comprehend. $158 million. That's more money than most people will see in multiple lifetimes combined. And the person who stole it? A medical doctor. A board-certified psychiatrist. Someone who'd gone through years of medical school, years of residency. Someone who'd taken the Hippocratic Oath. Dr. Sharon Iglehart owned and operated Riverside General Hospital in Harris County, Texas, in the Houston area, and she turned that hospital into a fraud factory. Here's what makes Dr. Iglehart's case particularly cruel. Psychiatrists treat the most vulnerable patients in healthcare. People struggling with mental illness, depression, anxiety, psychosis, and trauma. These patients trust their psychiatrist with their deepest fears, their darkest thoughts, and their most personal struggles. They come to psychiatric hospitals because they're desperate for help. They believe the treatment they're receiving is legitimate medical care designed to heal them. Dr. Iglehart exploited that trust. She billed Medicare for psychiatric services that were either not medically necessary or never provided at all. Think about that. Patients checked into Riverside General Hospital believing they were getting therapy sessions, psychiatric evaluations, medication management, group counseling. But the services they received didn't match what Medicare was being billed for. The hospital became a machine designed to generate fraudulent claims. Now, the way psychiatric fraud works is particularly insidious because mental health records are private. HIPAA laws protect patient confidentiality rigorously, which means it's harder for Medicare auditors to verify what actually happened in a therapy session. Did the psychiatrist really spend an hour counseling that patient? Did that group therapy session actually occur? Did the patient genuinely need that medication regimen? These questions are difficult to answer when you're looking at billing records from the outside. Dr. Iglehart understood this. She understood that mental health treatment exists in a gray area where oversight is challenging. So she inflated claims. She fabricated services entirely. She billed Medicare as if extensive therapy and treatment were occurring when it wasn't. Hospital records were falsified to support the fraudulent claims. And she used her credentials, MD, board-certified, psychiatrist, hospital owner, to add legitimacy to the operation. The scale of this fraud is almost incomprehensible. $158 million in fraudulent claims. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. $158 million. To put that in perspective, that's almost 8 times the size of Marie Neba's $13 million fraud. This scheme ran for years before Medicare auditors noticed the billing irregularities. When federal agents finally began investigating, when they started uncovering the scope of what Dr. Iglehart had done, even seasoned investigators were shocked. Potentially hundreds or thousands of Medicare patients had been affected over time. People who went to Riverside General Hospital seeking help for their mental health, who trusted their doctor, who believed the healthcare system would protect them. Instead, they became billing codes in a massive fraud operation. Ultimately, Dr. Iglehart was convicted in December 2015. The verdict, guilty of Medicare fraud. The sentence, 144 months in federal prison. That's 12 years. Now, 12 years is a serious sentence, but let's do some math here. She stole $158 million, 12 years in prison. That works out to about $13 million per year of prison time. Or looked at another way, she'll serve roughly 1 month in prison for every $13 million she stole. Does that seem proportional? The judge considered the massive dollar amount and the breach of trust. Dr. Iglehart wasn't just a medical professional. She was a doctor with advanced training who'd taken an oath to do no harm. Yet the sentence still feels almost insufficient, given the scale of the theft. Dr. Iglehart is currently behind bars in a federal prison facility. Her projected release date is around December 2027. She'll be in her 60s or 70s by then. Her medical license revoked forever. Her reputation destroyed. Her career over. Everything she built, every credential she earned, all of it gone. And here's the thing that should make us all pause. $158 million doesn't just disappear into thin air. That money came from Medicare. Medicare is funded by taxpayers. Every working American contributes to Medicare through payroll taxes. And that money is supposed to provide health care for elderly and disabled Americans who need it. When someone steals $158 million from Medicare, that's $158 million that didn't go to legitimate patient care. That's cancer treatments not provided, surgeries delayed, home health services denied. Real people suffering because a doctor decided her bank account was more important than her oath. $158 million. Drop a comment right now. Do you think 12 years is enough for stealing that amount? Should she have gotten more time? Because honestly, when you look at the numbers, when you think about the scale of what she did, 12 years almost seems like she got away with it. But maybe that's just me. Let us know what you think. So that's Dr. Sharon Iglehart, a psychiatrist who stole $158 million. But our next case has something none of the others have. Celebrity status, national television, $1 million prize, and then a fall from grace so complete it's almost Shakespearean. You might even recognize her face. 3. Joyce Agu. Well, Joyce Agu. If you watched television in the mid-2000s, if you were a fan of CBS's The Amazing Race, you might remember her. Season 7. Joyce and her husband Uchenna raced around the world, competed against other teams, faced impossible challenges, and ultimately won the whole thing. They took home $1 million. $1 million on national television. America watched them win. America celebrated with them. They became minor celebrities in Houston, Texas, where they lived. Joyce wasn't just a reality TV winner, though. She'd also appeared in Hollywood films. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. She was an actress, a public figure, someone people recognized. And then Joyce took all that goodwill, all that public recognition, all that celebrity status, and decided to leverage it into something else entirely. She and her husband created their own reality show called The Great Raise Houston. The concept was beautiful, a charity fundraiser that aired on KHOU Channel 11, raising money for the Houston Food Bank's Kids Cafe program and Casa de Esperanza. Joyce became known for her philanthropy work around Houston. She was the woman who won the amazing race and then used her platform to help the community. People loved her. People trusted her. And while all of this public charity work was happening, Joyce Agu was stealing over $3 million from Medicare. Let me lay out the irony here because it's almost too perfect to be real. Joyce is hosting charity fundraisers on television. She's raising money for hungry children in Houston. She's being celebrated as a philanthropist. And simultaneously, behind the scenes, she's running 2 fraudulent home health companies, DHS Healthcare Incorporated and Nutrend Healthcare Incorporated. Both offices are located in Houston, both billing Medicare for services that patients didn't qualify for, both submitting claims for services that were never provided at all. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. How do you stand in front of cameras asking people to donate to charity while you're actively stealing millions from a government healthcare program? How do you reconcile those 2 versions of yourself? Anyway, here's how Joyce's scheme worked. She paid individuals to falsely certify that patients qualified for home health services. These weren't legitimate medical evaluations. These were kickback arrangements. Once the false certifications were in place, Joyce submitted claims to Medicare for those patients. She billed for home health visits, nursing care, and therapy sessions, services the patients didn't qualify for in the first place. In some cases, services that were never provided at all. Medicare paid out on these fraudulent claims. The money flowed into DHS Healthcare and Nutrend Healthcare. Over $3 million total, and Joyce pocketed it, used it to enrich herself, all while maintaining her public image as a charitable, community-minded former reality TV star. The investigation eventually caught up with her. Medicare fraud investigators noticed the billing patterns, the same red flags that appear in these cases over and over. Patients who don't meet home health qualifications, services billed but never documented, suspicious patterns in the claims. Audits revealed the fraud. Then came the federal investigation, a coordinated effort between the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, the FBI, and the Texas Attorney General's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. They gathered financial records, they examined patient files, they interviewed witnesses. The evidence was overwhelming. Joyce Agu, the beloved Amazing Race winner, the philanthropist, and the actress, was running a multi-million-dollar Medicare fraud operation. Now here comes the part that shocked Houston. When someone with Joyce's public profile gets arrested, it makes headlines. The community that had celebrated her, that had watched her win on television, that had contributed to her charity fundraisers, they felt betrayed. How could the woman who won $1 million on national TV, who seemed so successful, need to steal from Medicare? But that's the thing about greed, isn't it? It's never about need. It's about wanting. It's about always wanting more, no matter how much you already have. Joyce had fame, had money, and had public admiration. It wasn't enough. She pleaded guilty on October 17th, 2022, stood in front of U.S. District Judge Randy Crane and admitted what she'd done. The sentencing happened on March 29th, 2023. The judge heard arguments from Joyce's defense team about her family, her charitable contributions, all the good she'd done in the community. But the judge also considered the massive amount of fraud, the millions stolen from Medicare, the betrayal of public trust. The sentence, 60 months in federal prison. That's 5 years, followed by 3 years of supervised release. And here's the financial penalty. Joyce was ordered to pay $3,068,952 in restitution. Every dollar she stole, she has to pay back, even if it takes the rest of her life. Joyce Agu is currently behind bars in federal prison. Her projected release is around March 2028. When she gets out, she'll be in her late 60s. Her reputation, gone. Her legacy. Instead of being remembered as the Amazing Race winner who gave back to her community, she'll be remembered as the reality TV star who stole millions from elderly people's health care. Everything she built, every bit of goodwill she'd accumulated, destroyed. From winner to prisoner in less than 2 decades. Think about what she lost. The $1 million she won on The Amazing Race, gone. Her reputation as a philanthropist, destroyed. Her freedom for 5 years, taken. Her ability to ever work in healthcare again, revoked. Her place in Houston society, finished. And for what? $3 million that she has to pay back anyway. The math doesn't work. The risk versus reward calculation was insane. But greed doesn't do math. Greed just wants more. So that's Joyce Agu. From reality television to federal prison. But our next case operated on an even bigger scale. $20 million stolen through not one, but 2 companies running simultaneously. How does someone manage a dual fraud operation like that? Let's find out. 4. Evelyn Mokwuah. Alright, so, if you thought running one fraudulent home health company was ambitious, meet Evelyn Mokwuah. She decided one wasn't enough. Evelyn ran 2 companies at the same time. Beechwood Home Health and Crescevin Health Management Corporation. Both are located in Houston, Texas. Both in adjoining office suites in the Sharpstown area. Both billing Medicare fraudulently. For 8 years, from 2008 through 2016, Evelyn orchestrated a dual operation that defrauded Medicare of $20 million. $20 million. That's the second highest dollar amount on our entire list, right after Dr. Iglehart's $158 million. Evelyn was 54 years old at sentencing. She was a registered nurse from Pearland, Texas, part of the greater Houston metropolitan area. Her title was Director of Nursing and Administration. These aren't entry-level positions. You don't become Director of Nursing without years of experience, without demonstrating competence and leadership. Evelyn had climbed the professional ladder. She'd earned credentials, built a career, established herself in the healthcare industry, and then she used all of that expertise, all of that insider knowledge about how Medicare billing works to create an elaborate fraud scheme that would eventually cost taxpayers $20 million. The victims in Evelyn's case were elderly people who qualified for home health services under Medicare. Or at least that's what the billing records claimed. In reality, many of these patients weren't homebound at all. They didn't qualify for home health services under Medicare's strict criteria, but Evelyn falsified patient records to make non-homebound patients appear homebound. She created elaborate documentation showing that bedridden, immobile patients were receiving nursing care in their homes when those patients were actually mobile and active. The lies were systematic, coordinated across both companies, designed to maximize billing to Medicare while providing minimal actual care, or in many cases, no care at all. Here's how Evelyn's dual company scheme worked. Step 1. She paid patient recruiters to bring in Medicare beneficiaries. These recruiters would find elderly people and convince them to sign up for home health services. Step 2. Evelyn falsely certified these patients as homebound even when they weren't. She'd create medical documentation claiming patients couldn't leave their homes without significant difficulty, when in fact many were perfectly capable of getting around. Step 3. She falsified patient records showing they qualified for home health services. Charts were created, medical notes were written, all designed to make the billing appear legitimate. Step 4. Evelyn paid doctors to sign false plans of care. She'd give doctors kickbacks in exchange for their signatures on medical documents authorizing home health services. Step 5. She billed Medicare for services that were not medically necessary. Patients who didn't need daily nursing visits were billed for daily nursing visits. Step 6. She billed for services that were never provided at all. Records showed nurses spending hours with patients when those visits never happened. Step 7. She collected payments from Medicare through both Beechwood and Chrysivan, essentially running the same scheme twice simultaneously. The sophistication here is notable. This wasn't a crude operation. Evelyn coordinated fraud across 2 separate legal entities. She created systematic falsification of medical records. She managed kickback payments to multiple parties, patient recruiters, doctors, possibly others. She generated an elaborate paper trail of fake documentation designed to withstand audit scrutiny. For 8 years, this machine ran smoothly. $20 million in fraudulent claims processed. $20 million collected from Medicare. And the whole time, Evelyn presented herself as a legitimate healthcare administrator, a director of nursing, someone dedicated to providing quality home health services to elderly patients. Eventually, the FBI and the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General began investigating. They examined patient files. They reviewed billing records. They interviewed recruiters and staff members who'd participated in the scheme. One of Evelyn's co-conspirators, a woman named Amara Operanozzi, age 47 from Richmond, Texas, eventually pleaded guilty and cooperated with investigators. The evidence piled up. The case went to trial in August 2017. It lasted 4 days. Prosecutors presented patient files showing people billed as homebound who were actually mobile. They showed billing records that didn't match actual care provided. They called witnesses who testified about the kickback arrangements. And on the final day, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty. Guilty on 1 count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. Guilty on 4 counts of healthcare fraud. The sentencing happened on April 4th, 2019. U.S. District Judge Gray H. Miller of the Southern District of Texas handed down the punishment. 10 years in federal prison, 120 months. And the restitution? $20,462,607.21. Every penny she stole, she has to pay back. The judge understood what Evelyn had done. She'd run a sophisticated, coordinated fraud operation that stole $20 million from a government healthcare program designed to serve elderly Americans. She'd used her nursing credentials as camouflage. She'd exploited vulnerable patients. She'd corrupted doctors with kickback payments. And she'd done it all while maintaining the appearance of legitimacy. Evelyn Mokwuah is currently behind bars in federal prison. Her projected release is around April 2029. She'll be in her mid-60s by then. And here's the brutal lesson from her case. Running 2 companies doubled her fraud. But it also doubled her evidence trail. Every falsified record at Beechwood was another piece of evidence. Every fraudulent claim at Chris Evans was another count prosecutors could charge. The sophistication that made her scheme successful ultimately made her conviction easier. She built her own paper trail straight to prison. $20 million stolen through 2 companies. But our next case has a nickname that makes your blood run cold. They called her Momma while she dealt 160,000 opioid pills during the worst drug crisis in American history. 5. Sokari Bobmanuel. So let's talk about Sokari Bobmanuel. Her nickname was Momma. Think about that for a second. Momma, a term of endearment, a name that evokes warmth, care, protection. People called her Momma while she was distributing 160,000 opioid pills into Houston communities. 160,000 pills. Pills like oxycodone, hydrocodone, highly addictive. Schedule II narcotics that were destroying lives across America. This was happening during the height of the opioid epidemic, when tens of thousands of Americans were dying every year from overdoses, when families were being ripped apart by addiction, when emergency rooms were overwhelmed with people who'd taken 1 too many pills and stopped breathing. Momma was adding fuel to that fire. Sokari was a licensed pharmacist in Houston, Texas. Pharmacists are supposed to be the last line of defense against prescription drug abuse. When a doctor writes a prescription, the pharmacist reviews it. They're supposed to look for red flags. Is this patient getting the same prescription from multiple doctors? Are they requesting refills too frequently? Are the quantities suspiciously high? Does this prescription make medical sense? Ethical pharmacists refuse to fill prescriptions that look illegitimate. They call the prescribing doctor to verify. They document their concerns. They protect patients from themselves and from corrupt doctors who write prescriptions for cash. That's what pharmacists are supposed to do. Sokari did the opposite. She filled prescriptions she knew were illegitimate. She ignored every red flag. She continued filling suspicious prescriptions again and again, distributing 160,000 opioid pills, profiting over $1 million from other people's addiction. Let me put that quantity in perspective because it's almost incomprehensible. 160,000 pills. If you gave one pill per day to an addict, that's enough to supply 438 people for a year. But addicts don't take one pill per day. They take multiple pills daily. So let's say the average addict takes 5 pills per day. That's still enough to supply 87 people for an entire year. 87 people whose addiction was enabled by Momma. 87 families watching their loved ones spiral into addiction. And that's just if we assume every pill went to an end user. Many of these pills were probably resold on the street, meaning the actual number of people affected is much higher. Each of those pills represents a potential overdose, a potential death, a potential family destroyed. The opioid epidemic was killing people. Real people with names and families and futures, people who started with a legitimate prescription after surgery or an injury, got addicted, couldn't stop, and eventually ended up buying pills on the street because their doctor wouldn't prescribe anymore, or people who got addicted to pills couldn't afford them and switched to heroin because it was cheaper. The path from prescription pills to street drugs to death was well documented, well known, happening thousands of times per year. Sokari knew this. Every pharmacist in America knew this. The epidemic was front page news. The CDC was issuing warnings. States were implementing prescription monitoring programs, and Sokari kept filling prescriptions anyway. Because it was profitable, because she was making over $1 million from this operation. $1 million while people died. Pill mills work like this. A corrupt doctor writes prescriptions without legitimate medical need. Patients, often addicts or dealers, bring those prescriptions to a pharmacy. The pharmacist should refuse to fill obviously suspicious prescriptions. But a corrupt pharmacist fills them anyway. The pills hit the streets. Addicts take them and get deeper into addiction. Some overdose, some die. Everyone profits except the addicts. The doctor gets cash payments for writing prescriptions. The pharmacist gets money from insurance or cash from patients. The dealers make money reselling pills. The addicts, they lose everything. Their health, their families, their futures, sometimes their lives. Sokari's role in this system was critical. Without pharmacists willing to fill illegitimate prescriptions, pill mills can't function. Doctors can write all the fake prescriptions they want. But if pharmacists refuse to fill them, the scheme collapses. Sokari was the enabler. She made it possible. She knew what she was doing. Federal agents eventually tracked the prescription patterns. The DEA got involved. They interviewed patients. They examined pharmacy records showing the massive quantity of opioid pills being dispensed. They followed the financial trail showing Sokari's $1 million profit. The evidence was overwhelming. She was convicted in October 2023. The verdict: guilty of operating a pill mill. The sentence: 14 years in federal prison, 168 months. That's the longest sentence on our list except for Marie Neba's 75 years. Think about what that means. The judge looked at what Sokari did, looked at the 160,000 pills, looked at the timing during the opioid epidemic, looked at the $1 million profit, and decided 14 years was appropriate. Judges are throwing the book at pill mill operators now. The message is clear. If you're a medical professional and you enable the opioid epidemic, you're going to prison for a very long time. Sokari Momma Bobmanuel is currently behind bars in federal prison. She won't be released until October 2037. She'll be in her 60s or 70s by then, probably closer to 70s. With good behavior, she might serve 12 years instead of the full 14. But either way, this is essentially the end of her professional life. Her pharmacy license is revoked forever. Her reputation is destroyed. Her nickname Momma now carries a twisted irony. She was called Momma while poisoning people's actual children with opioid pills. 160,000 pills. That's enough to supply a small town with opioids. 14 years for Momma the pill dealer. Our next two cases involve shorter sentences, but the crimes are just as shocking. $11 million stolen in Dallas, a partnership between two nurses. Let's count down the final two. 6. Patience Okoroji. She was a licensed vocational nurse in Dallas County, Texas. LVNs are entry-level nurses. They haven't gone through the full registered nurse program. They have more limited scope of practice. They work under supervision. Patients used her LVN credentials to co-own a home health company called Timely Home Health Services. Her partner in crime was another LVN named Usani Ewa. Two nurses, one fraudulent company, $11.3 million stolen from Medicare. $11.3 million. That's a staggering amount of money for any fraud scheme, but especially for home health services, where the individual claims are relatively small. Think about how many fake claims you'd have to submit to reach $11.3 million. The victims here were elderly Medicare beneficiaries in the Dallas area. These were people recruited through false promises of free home health care. Medicare covers home health services for people who are homebound, who need skilled nursing care or therapy in their homes. It's meant for people recovering from surgery, people with chronic conditions that make leaving home difficult, elderly people who need assistance with daily activities. Patients and her partner targeted these vulnerable populations. They recruited Medicare beneficiaries, created false documentation showing they qualified for services, then billed Medicare for home health visits, therapy sessions, and nursing care. Services that were not medically necessary, services that in many cases were never provided at all. The scale here is massive. To steal $11.3 million, you're talking about potentially thousands of fraudulent claims over multiple years. The scheme operated like most home health fraud. Patients and Usani recruited Medicare beneficiaries, probably through patient recruiters they paid kickbacks to. They created false documentation, charts showing patients were homebound when they weren't, medical notes showing they needed nursing care when they didn't. They billed Medicare for home health visits, where nurses supposedly spent an hour or more providing skilled care. They billed for therapy sessions. They billed for medical supplies. All of it flowing through Timely Home Health Services. The money came in. $11.3 million total. Patients and Usani split the profits, enriching themselves while elderly people's Medicare information was being exploited. Medicare fraud strike forces eventually uncovered the scheme. That's how most of these cases are discovered. Pattern analysis, audits, whistleblowers. Someone notices the billing doesn't make sense. Someone sees that Timely Home Health Services is billing for an unusually high number of patients. Someone compares the services billed to the medical documentation and realizes it doesn't match. The investigation begins. Financial records are subpoenaed. Patient files are reviewed. The evidence shows services billed but never provided. It shows patients who didn't qualify for services receiving them anyway. The case builds. Prosecutors bring charges. Patients and Usani were both convicted in October 2019. The verdict: guilty of Medicare fraud and conspiracy. Patients received a sentence of 120 months, that's 10 years, in federal prison. Her partner, Usani Ewa, received 70 months, which is 5 years and 10 months. Different sentences for different levels of involvement, different criminal histories, and different roles in the scheme. But both nurses went to prison. The partnership didn't protect them. In fact, having a partner just meant there was someone who could potentially testify against you. The restitution in Patience's case was $8,650,000. Not the full $11.3 million, but close. That's money she has to pay back to Medicare. Even after serving 10 years in prison, she'll still owe millions of dollars. The debt doesn't go away, it follows you forever. Garnished wages, seized assets, tax refund intercepts. For the rest of her life, Patience will be paying back the money she stole. Patience Okoroji is currently behind bars in federal prison. Her projected release is around October 2029. She'll be in her 50s or 60s by then. Her nursing license is revoked. Her career is over. Her reputation is destroyed. 10 years in prison. $8.65 million in restitution. And for what? For greed. For thinking she could get away with it. For believing that stealing from Medicare was a victimless crime. It wasn't. Every dollar stolen from Medicare is a dollar that didn't go to legitimate patient care. So that's Patience Okoroji. 10 years for $11 million in fraud. One more case to go, the shortest sentence on our list, but still a serious crime involving 500,000 opioid pills. 7. Deanna Winfield-Gates. She's a licensed pharmacist from Houston, Texas, and her case is the most recent on our list. She was sentenced in January 2024. This is the shortest sentence of all 7 cases, but don't let that fool you into thinking this was a minor crime. Deanna dispensed over 500,000 opioid pills through a pill mill operation. 500,000 pills. Scheduled 2 narcotics like oxycodone and hydrocodone flooding into Houston neighborhoods. This happened during the ongoing opioid epidemic, when pharmacists across America were supposed to be more vigilant than ever about suspicious prescriptions. The victims in Deanna's case are the opioid addicts who received those pills. 500,000 pills is an enormous quantity. That's enough to supply hundreds of people with their daily addiction for months or years. Each pill represents someone's deteriorating health, someone's family watching them spiral into addiction, someone potentially overdosing. The opioid epidemic was well documented by the time Deanna was operating her pill mill. Everyone knew the dangers. Everyone knew people were dying. Pharmacists especially knew, because they were the ones filling prescriptions. They were the ones who saw patients coming back again and again for refills. They were the ones who noticed when something didn't look right. Deanna noticed, and she filled the prescriptions anyway. Pill mills at the pharmacy level work through willful blindness. A patient brings in a prescription. The pharmacist looks at it and sees red flags. This patient was just here 3 days ago for a refill of the same medication. They're supposed to have a month's supply. Or the prescription is from a doctor known for running a pain clinic. Or the patient is paying cash instead of using insurance, which is common with illegitimate prescriptions. An ethical pharmacist refuses to fill the prescription. They document their concerns. They report the doctor to the medical board. Deanna filled the prescriptions again and again. 500,000 pills dispensed. She knew, or should have known, these prescriptions were illegitimate. She continued anyway. The DEA and federal agents eventually tracked the prescription patterns. Pharmacy records showed the massive quantity of opioid pills being dispensed from Deanna's location. Patient interviews revealed what was really happening. People coming in with prescriptions from pill mill doctors, getting their opioids filled without questions asked, going back to those doctors for more prescriptions. The cycle continued until investigators shut it down. Financial records showed $60,000 that was ultimately forfeited. That's the smallest financial impact on our list. Compare that to Evelyn Mokwuah's $20.4 million in restitution, or Dr. Iglehart's $158 million in fraud. But $60,000 is still $60,000 that came from enabling addiction. Deanna was convicted and sentenced in January 2024. The verdict: guilty of operating a pill mill. The sentence: 6 years in federal prison, 72 months. That's the shortest sentence of all 7 cases on our list. Compare it to Neba's 75 years, or Sokari Bobmanuel's 14 years. 6 years seems almost lenient. But here's the thing, 6 years is still 6 years of your life in a federal prison cell. That's 6 years away from my family. 6 years where your career is over. 6 years where you're known as a convicted felon. And after those 6 years, Deanna will likely serve approximately 5 years with good behavior. She'll still have a criminal record forever. Her pharmacy license is revoked permanently. She can never work as a pharmacist again. Deanna Winfield-Gates is currently behind bars in federal prison. Her projected release is around January 2030. When she gets out, she'll be starting over completely. No license, no career, no reputation. All because she chose to ignore the red flags, to fill prescriptions she knew were suspicious, to prioritize profit over her professional obligations. But let's be clear. 500,000 opioid pills is a massive quantity. That's 500,000 pills that fueled addiction in Houston. That's potential overdoses. Those families were destroyed. That's people who died because pills were available when they shouldn't have been. The crime is absolutely serious. The impact is real. 6 years in prison reflects that seriousness, even if it's shorter than the other sentences we've discussed. So that's Deanna Winfield-Gates, the final case, 6 years for 500,000 pills. And with that, we've covered all 7 women. So here we are, 7 women, 7 medical professionals, 7 people who had successful careers, respected positions, and community standing. 7 people who threw it all away. Let me recap the shocking statistics for you. All 7 women are from Texas, Houston, Sugar Land, Dallas, Pearland. All 7 were medical professionals. 1 medical doctor, 2 registered nurses, 2 licensed vocational nurses, 2 pharmacists. All 7 are currently behind bars in federal prison. The combined fraud, over $226 million stolen from Medicare and through pill mill operations. The combined sentences, over 70 years of prison time. Some of these women will die in prison. Others will spend decades behind bars before seeing freedom again. Now let's talk about the bigger picture here, because these 7 cases represent just a tiny fraction of healthcare fraud in America. Medicare fraud costs billions of dollars annually, billions. That money comes from taxpayers. Every working American contributes to Medicare through payroll taxes. That money is supposed to provide health care for elderly and disabled Americans who need it. When someone steals from Medicare, they're stealing from all of us. They're stealing from legitimate patients who need care. Think about the cancer patient who can't get a home health nurse because the budget was drained by fraudulent claims. Think about the elderly person who needs physical therapy after a hip replacement but gets denied because Medicare is out of money. Real people suffer when resources are stolen, and the wealth they accumulated, the millions stolen from Medicare, the $1 million Joyce Agu won on reality TV, the luxury lifestyles funded by fraud, all of it is gone, seized by the government, ordered as restitution. Every dollar has to be paid back, even if it takes the rest of their lives. Their medical licenses are revoked forever. Their reputations are destroyed permanently. When people Google their names, they'll find news articles about fraud convictions, not about their professional accomplishments. They'll be remembered as criminals, not as healthcare providers. The opioid epidemic is another devastating impact. Pill mills like the ones Sokari Bobmanuel and Deanna Winfield-Gates operated fueled a crisis that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. The CDC estimates over 500,000 people died from opioid overdoses between 1999 and 2020. 500,000 people, each one of them was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's sibling, someone's friend. Pharmacists and doctors who enabled pill mills have blood on their hands. They knew people were dying. They kept filling prescriptions anyway. And now they're facing serious prison time, as they should be. There's a betrayal factor in these cases that makes them particularly infuriating. These weren't street criminals. These weren't people who turned to crime out of desperation or lack of options. These were educated professionals, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, people who'd gone through years of training, people who'd taken oaths. The Hippocratic Oath says, first, do no harm. These medical professionals did harm. They exploited patients. They enabled addiction. They stole from people who trusted them. Community trust in healthcare is damaged when medical professionals commit fraud. When people hear about nurses stealing from Medicare or pharmacists running pill mills, it makes them question whether their own healthcare providers are trustworthy. That cynicism, that erosion of trust, is one of the lasting impacts of these crimes. So here's our final question for you. What time is it where you're watching this? 3 a.m, lunch break, Sunday afternoon? Drop it in the comments. And where in the world are you? Are you in Texas where these crimes happened? California? Another country entirely? We want to know who's watching from around the globe. Which case shocked you the most? Was it Marie Neba's 75-year sentence while her husband fled the country? Was it Dr. Iglehart's $158 million fraud? Was it Joyce Agu falling from reality TV star to federal prisoner? Was it Sokari Bobmanuel earning the nickname Momma while dealing 160,000 opioid pills? Let us know in the comments. Do you think the sentences were fair? Too harsh? Not harsh enough? Marie got 75 years for $13 million in fraud. Dr. Iglehart got 12 years for $158 million in fraud. Does that math make sense? Should white-collar criminals who steal millions get longer sentences, or is prison time already long enough? We want to hear what you think. Hit that like button if you learned something new today. Subscribe for more shocking true crime cases, because unfortunately, there are plenty more stories like these 7. Healthcare fraud happens every day. Pill mills are still operating. Criminals are still stealing from Medicare. And eventually, most of them get caught. The federal government has resources, investigators, prosecutors who specialize in healthcare fraud. The cases might take years to build, but they're building them. And when conviction comes, the sentences are serious. These 7 women had everything: successful careers, money, respect. They threw it all away through greed. They thought they were smart enough to get away with it. They thought Medicare was too big to notice. They thought their credentials would protect them. They were wrong. Now they're behind bars. Their lives ruined. Their families destroyed. Marie Neba will die in prison. Dr. Iglehart will be elderly when she's released. Joyce Agu's celebrity status became her shame. Evelyn Mokwuah's sophisticated dual company operation just gave prosecutors twice the evidence. Sokari Momma Bobmanuel enabled the opioid epidemic that killed thousands. Patience Okoroji and her partner both went to prison together. Deanna Winfield-Gates just got sentenced this year, and she's already serving time. Crime doesn't pay, especially when you're stealing from the people who trusted you most. These 7 women learned that lesson the hard way. Behind bars, licenses revoked, reputations destroyed, families devastated, and for what? Money they have to pay back anyway. Wealth that evaporated the moment the handcuffs went on. It wasn't worth it. It was never worth it. That's the lesson here. That's what we need to remember. Greed destroys everything it touches. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.